What's up, guys? It's Rob here, and we need to talk about Sundial stock, ticker symbol SNDL, because it is actually dumping a bit today, as is the whole market, but it's dumping for a reason related to the Alcanna acquisition that was going to happen on January 7th. We're going to be talking about that, as well as why I don't think it's the worst news in the world, why I don't think it should be dumping as much as it is, but we're going to start off taking a look at the chart first of all. As you can see, that Sundial has actually had a little bit of a pump in the pre-market, right? When this news first came out, and then it actually started dumping down to 56 cents, where it finally found some support. Now, this news is actually that Sundial and Alcanna have revised the consideration agreements for the acquisition. So there are some new important details that you probably need to know about if you're a Sundial shareholder or an Alcanna shareholder, so listen up. Basically, Sundial is giving Alcanna a bit of a better deal in this merger agreement. So basically, Sundial has agreed to improve the considerations they'll be providing to Alcanna shareholders, and they'll basically be giving them more value for each Alcanna share that Sundial will be acquiring. So they'll be doing this by decreasing the share count that they're giving of new Sundial shares to Alcanna shareholders, but also by including a cash component. So we're going to break this down. Basically, in this amended agreement, Alcanna shareholders will receive, for every share of Alcanna that they have, 8.85 common shares of Sundial stock. So every share of Alcanna will essentially turn into 8.85 shares of Sundial in the holders' brokerage accounts. And they'll also get $1.50 in cash. So before there was no cash component, and originally they were also going to get 10.69 shares of Sundial stock. So basically, they've reduced the number of shares that they're giving and included some cash as well to make this deal a little bit more juicy. And if you actually do the math, it's about a 40-cent increase per share, pretty close to it. We'll see what the actual increase is when Sundial closes on January 7th, what the actual value of the Sundial shares are. But as of now, it's about a 40-cent increase because they're getting about 2 fewer shares and $1.50 in cash. And 2 Sundial shares add up to about $1.10 at this current price of 56 cents. So all in all, it's not the worst thing, right? So they have, once again, changed this from only shares going over to Alcanna to a mix of cash and shares. And this is important for a couple of reasons. First off, this is going to represent potentially a slightly worse fundamental situation for Sundial, right? Because they're going to have less cash on their balance sheet. However, it doesn't represent necessarily a worse situation for the stock price because they will have a lower float after this new deal goes through than they would have had when the original deal went through. And that's because they're giving over fewer shares. Originally, they were giving over 10.69. Now they're giving over 8.85. So there will actually be fewer new shares created during this deal, which could help in the situation of a big pump up in price that's driven off of volume and hype, not necessarily fundamentals. So over the long term, this deal might not be as good as the original one because, once again, they are paying more for those Alcanna shares. However, over the short term, and the potential hype that could be generated in 2022 as we get closer to some big catalysts such as legalization, it's certainly going to represent a better thing for Sundial as there won't be as many shares in the free float. They'll actually have more potential to pump up higher because there will be less supply of the stock available for people who want to buy it. So I will briefly cover why this may have happened, right? The reason that I suspect this happened is because they likely didn't have quite enough votes on deck from Alcanna to actually get this merger going through. So the reason I suspect this is because this merger was already supposed to happen a while ago, right? We were covering this way back in December when this merger was originally meant to go through, and they had to end up postponing it to January 7th, which is the current day that we're still expecting it to go through on, hopefully at least, right? There are some updates to that, so I will talk about that in a second. But the reason that they originally postponed it is because originally, a couple of days before the actual merger was supposed to happen back in December, only 56.29% of Alcanna shares eligible to vote had voted for or against the agreement, right? They need at least 66 2/3% of the shares to cast a vote one way or the other to actually consummate the arrangement. And then obviously they need the majority of those shares to say, yes, let's go through with the merger. However, they only had 56%. And during the course of the month that they had postponed it from December to January, they were hoping that more Alcanna shareholders would end up coming through and voting. And obviously that didn't happen. The Alcanna shareholders wanted potentially a slightly better deal, which is exactly what they got. There was probably some backroom discussions between the CEOs or the board of directors that led to this deal. Likely, some of the bigger shareholders could strong-arm Sundial essentially into paying a slightly higher price, which, ideally wouldn't have happened. Ideally, the the move probably would have just went through on the original merger. That would have been the most seamless and least negative situation for Sundial, right? Obviously, shareholders are not a huge fan of this, though we are bouncing off of 56 cents. We're above 57 at the moment, so it's not the worst situation in the world. It represents about a 6% drop, which, could have been worse. But overall, this isn't ideal for Sundial, though once again, it's not the worst case scenario because we could actually see higher highs in Sundial stock based off of a hype-driven rally, right? Because we have lower share counts. So that's potentially a good situation. Now, they have changed a couple of things due to this amendment, right? Obviously, the vote is tomorrow, so maybe some Alcanna shareholders will want to change their vote because of this new news that we're hearing. And they have changed the revised proxy cutoff time to 6:30 a.m. on January 7th. So if you're a Alcanna shareholder and you have voted one way or the other and you have changed your mind about whether or not you want to vote the same way you did prior because of this new amendment to this agreement, you can now change your vote by proxy until January 7th. You can also vote by proxy if you haven't already. Originally, that date was January 5th. So now you have a little bit of extra time to vote and decide whether or not you want to merge with Sundial if you're an Alcanna shareholder. Now, obviously, short interest has increased a bit. Typically, when you see a stock start to tank, short interest does go up as shorts try to essentially do the same thing that long traders do when they see a stock pumping up. They'll try to get in on the momentum, and shorts try to get in on the downwards momentum. So we did actually see short interest increase by 1.11%, bringing us to 12.41% of the free float being short and 254 million shares being short, which, isn't the worst thing in the world. We're still, if you look at this chart, much, much lower than where we were not that long ago. We're still near all-time lows for Sundial short interest ever since August, so it's still a fairly decent situation for Sundial stock. A lot of shorts aren't jumping in on this. It's not like the short interest pumped by 10% because people were expecting Sundial to tank on this news. It really isn't that big of a fundamental change. They're only paying an extra 40 cents per share of Alcanna stock. So all in all, it's not the worst situation, and I do think that Sundial will probably still continue to do well in 2022. Obviously, this news was a bit of a shock to people, and I do want to point out that I missed the live stream this morning, so that was just because I woke up a little bit late. We'll talk about it in the next live stream. Hopefully, I'll be back tomorrow. That's the plan at least, and hopefully, no one is taking this as financial advice, right? I got to do the disclaimer. Obviously, none of this is financial advice. I'm not recommending to anyone to buy or sell any shares of any kind of stock. I'm just giving you guys my opinion on the stock, reading out some of the news, and letting you know what's going on with Sundial and Alcanna and the merger situation. So feel free to subscribe if you enjoy the channel, if you enjoy this kind of content, if you want more Sundial stock updates, if you appreciate how quickly this potentially came out. I mean, I think I'm getting to this news pretty quickly. It's only about an hour or so late. I did sleep in a little bit longer than normal this morning, so we probably would have talked about it on the live stream had I been there, but we weren't able to do it. So other than that, guys, have a great day. I'll see you in the next one. Once again, don't forget to like the video if you appreciate this, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.